Managing continuous integration with DevPanel and Drupal on AWS. I originally had DDEV in there, but this really isn't DDEV centric. This is a Drupal to AWS publishing. And if you haven't done this before, it can be quite a process to set up the permissions and deployment tools. They're beautiful tools available into AWS. There's deployment interfaces. And I think the first time I set one of those up took me 3 or 4 days to get through all of the incredibly cryptic password management or permission management settings. So what this thing is going to do very easily is modify and adjust and create and just set up your AWS, get the Drupal up there, get the deployments and connect your Git to it. And that's amazing. This is a week's work done right without the second guessing of, did I do it right? And we're going to do it pretty quickly. And the nice part about this is, unlike Salim here, who's on this chat today, who actually maintains this product, I am not an expert. And I was watching one of his techs do a demo and his mouse moves so fast. No, so I'm a reasonable amateur at this. I've set up lots of servers. I've set up AWS servers, but I've only set up the deep DevPanel integration 2 or 3 times. So this is going to be a pretty honest impression of how easy this product is to use in getting your Drupal, getting DevPanel integrated into your Drupal, and then up to and then getting your continuous integration operational from your repository up to AWS. And if you don't really know what continuous integration means, we can do that in the QA at the very end, but let's go. I'm Will, I covered all that. Okay, I'm gonna talk, most of the slides aren't this wordy, here goes. The last decade has brought us amazing progress in software standardization and automation. While coding standards have moved forward, the expectation of the development environments has shifted in remarkable ways. Most of the code houses have moved away from the individual LAMP environments for the developer work, opting for containerized options like Docker, and even helper apps like Lando and DDEV. That's in your logo. At the server hosting level, we have moved from the precious little thing approach to server stand-up to scripted build-on-demand containers. The ability to spec, edit, audit servers with reproducible results has resulted in a fundamental shift in our approach to website serving applications. This is huge. It used to be that you were so concerned, like someone hacked your server and maybe they corrupted some of your files, and how would you know? And I've sat through those long weekends putting together servers again and trying to understand what went so terribly wrong. And when you start to move to these deployable infrastructures, like I want to stand up an entire server to host my site and get that operational now. And if my server is compromised, I just want to throw that away. That's big, that's huge. And it's still making its way into the community. It's not fully integrated yet, but it is such an intense security improvement and standardizations improvement over the way technology used to be. No more precious little thing. Yes?
One thing that I like about this slide is I can, as I'm reading it, I can almost imagine the Star Wars music behind it and this text scrolling up the screen. It's written very much like, it reminds me very much of the Star Wars, I don't know, what's that called? The text scroll or something like that?
Yeah, I actually thought about all sun transparencies.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, I really get a picture for where it is.
So the walled gardens of major hosting companies provide automated systems to manage these containers and continuous delivery and build systems. AWS world provides you with, which is not to be confused with those just mentioned, provides you with excellent, highly configurable container environments. However, the management systems for this and other container systems often require a very high level of technical training and engagement, which brings us to DevPanel. That's Salim down below, and he's in this chat laughing at me, I'm sure, hopefully with a cocktail. So what he's been putting together, a point-and-click DevOps control panel. In this presentation, we're going to test drive the configuration management DevPanel by deploying a Drupal site via GitHub. I believe that the DevPanel actually extends out beyond AWS, and it most certainly expands out beyond GitHub. The other available repository platforms are also supported. I've seen the Bitbucket runs and whatnot. I will be using GitHub. There you go. This presentation will run through the following steps: creating an account on DevPanel, linking the account to your Git, adding your build triggers to the mix, standing up your site in AWS via DevPanel, and add DevPanel to your existing Drupal repo. And as much as that last thing should be the first thing, I put it at the end because that way we can talk about it while the build is running, while the AWS build is running. So there you go. We'll cover all the parts. So my ingredients, I'll be using a standard DDEV enabled Drupal repo. If you want to learn more about some DDEV stuff, that Matt guy, he's got a fabulous presentation on working with that and Gitpod. And I think when we're all done with this, we need to sling all these together into an entire container narrative. And then all hail Randy Fay for putting together so much incredible work, which you'll actually see some of his commits during this presentation, and his efforts on DDEV. I have nothing against Lando and its many excellent features. For the sake of this video, I created a couple of repositories, a DDEV enabled D9, not required, that I copied directly from DDEV's repo, and I implemented the DevPanel repo, imported into my personal repository. And we'll take a quick peek at the contents of that towards the end while the build is running. And I'm gonna just proselytize for a moment. I'm not gonna do this from the command line, and I don't think anyone ever should. So I'm gonna proselytize for a moment about GUI Git managers. Why am I using Tower in this demo? Are you really using the command line Git if your repo manager is reviewing your conflict in GitHub buckets GUI? No, I say no. So why not enjoy a little of the GUI yourself? Nothing against GitKraken. It's fine open source product similar to Tower. But if you look over here on the right, you have such an amazing and interesting history to what's going on in this repository. Shouldn't you be looking at that? Like, look, Randy Fay with a hat. Okay, so we're gonna go straight to the demo here, create a DevPanel demo account. Again, Salim, yay. Oops, we're not there yet, that's QA. Get out of this thing. All right, we need to get my browser up here, Bink. And we're gonna sign in to DevPanel. So what we won't be doing in this video and what we should do in the future is tie this to my own personal AWS and go through the process of doing that. What we will be using is the beta.site.devpanel.com, which allows you to go in, build these tools, have a full implementation. Your server is up there, and I think it lasts like 24 or 48 hours before they take it down or something like that, until it causes too much trouble and Slim stops giving us this tool. But we're going to be deploying to their AWS environment, not to my personal one. So we need an email, and I need an email. I've got all that prepped over here already. So as you can see how many times I've run this demo, we'll be using Kirchheimer 03 and a nice little password I've prepped. Keep everything synchronized. Get out. Oh, sorry. Sign up. Try that again. Live demos. All right. Now we got get a confirmation notice. So we pop up the email client and pop over to, I believe, it's probably going to Esteemed. Me copy paste this guy because who knows what my default browser is today. I think we're confirmed and go back to the login. Did I do 3 or 2? I think I did 3. I only remember this every couple of years when you need to do these iterations and demos or when testing software, just add that little plus sign and a numeric value and it gets stripped out and it still arrives in your personal email folder. I love that. I always, it's every 3 years. All right, so I am not going to watch this excellent video. He makes really good videos. So continue. Click. So I'm sorry. When we entered that, it had a demo option. I clicked the demo option. It's creating my space right now for my user +3, which will allow us to track this versus my other will accounts during this demo. And our project is ready. We're going to hit create project. We're going to name it. I believe, okay, click get. And so, all right, anyway. Doesn't really matter, but demo. Hit next. Can't jump ahead on all these forms. They really do want you to type stuff. We're going to hit 9. It does not force code into your existence. And for this demo, we're going to be using GitHub. If you choose one of these other platforms, you're actually going to get some different instructions on which .yaml files to name and produce inside your repository towards the later stages of this. So the GitHub one here will both send us over to GitHub to authenticate, and it'll as well give us customized content. So we hit that button and it popped.
Can I ask my question about that?
I think it just did that automatically. So we're going to use an existing repo. And the thing here is that if I don't start with a search, it's going to show you all of my repositories. So you don't really need to have a search here, but it does isolate your results so that we can select DevPanel mashup. So normally you just go straight to the select repository. Now it's pulling all of this data you're seeing here from GitHub. It established its connection, it imported its relationships, and now it's letting me select what I want. This is my initial test mashup. This is an open repository. I think I'm going to just leave it that way, but so you can just pop over here and have a look. But for the sake of naming conventions during the continuous delivery, we'll be switching over to master. You can name your branch anything you want. All right, confirm and create project. So right now it's building our server, and that's pretty exciting. From scratch. So we have an opportunity here to select some files from a URL for our database. So if we were migrating to a new server, we could pop that in here. Or if I haven't tried the existing application button, I imagine it lets us select our other containers on this server, but I would probably end up using this guy. But we're going from scratch. Since we're potentially developing a dev site that hasn't launched to the general public yet, just like with all the other major hosting platforms, we have the ability to lock that site down from the get-go so that people can't stumble into our new and exciting Nike look. No, we don't need to do that. code server, PHP admin. The advanced config is super exciting, and we will not be doing that. It has, did I forget to hit next?
You did.
Yes. There we go. Next. In the advanced is where we get into all of the opportunities to configure your AWS environment and your actual build, and that's fabulous. We're going to be using the default. We're not going to touch this, and our Drupal site will be coming up just fine because of that. Matt, you have a curious look on your face. Do you want to see those again, or are you good? Okay, there we go. Next. And we're deploying. So let's see. So this is building. It's going out there and creating our server, and it's going to have Drupal in it. It's going to have our Drupal in it that was loaded out of our Git repository. And that was most of it. Now, what we have right now is a deployed server, but we don't have yet is continuous integration. And while this is building, because it does take a little while, we're going to go and look at the repos that were involved in this process. And then we'll do the continuous integration build at the end after it's done building, so we can integrate to it. So I'm going to pull up my other laptop because I've been busy today. And so here's my other laptop. And if we look in Tower, which I love very much, we'll see my repo. So this is a public repo. It was listed in that slide earlier. But basically what I've done here is I added a remote entry for DevPanel source, remote entry for DDEV. I created a branch for a separate repository for my mashup, and I pulled DDEV into it, and then I pulled DevPanel into it. And that was it. I think I might have had one tiny little merge conflict in one of the composer items, but that was all it took to add the DevPanel resources initially to my code. So if instead of starting with the raw DDEV, you were starting with your own implementation of an existing Drupal site, this is it. You start with this guy, you pull it into your master, then you pull in DevPanel's resources. And then you're going to have two YAML files we're going to touch in a second to activate the continuous integration. So let's look for a second over at DevPanel's contents. So this is DevPanel's repository, public repository. You can go, and this is the totality of the scripts involved in standing this up. So if you're an organization that's faced with a lot of security audits, you have a couple of exciting things about this. Number one, at the end of the day, you are publishing to your AWS, and DevPanel is out of the picture at that point. So if Salim wins the lottery tomorrow and goes and becomes a fisherman, it's okay. This product can disappear and your AWS is fine. You need to come up with a new continuous integration solution, but that's a few lines, that's a few pages of code, not this tool does not lock you in. It's a neat and interesting item that's very extensible, and it does a lot of good. It does not trap you. So if you're coming in at the end of the day and you want to see what is this thing doing, all of that behavior is right in here. You want to go look at the scripts. This one is our important one up here for most daily use. This is where we are configuring the server. We're picking our PHP versions, all of those elements that go into standing up your environment. And this is only missing one item that we'll be discussing in a little bit, which is a hooks file. I mean, a hooks entry. And I think that goes in automatically now. Either way, we'll come back to that. So this is DevPanel's code base as far as your configuration files and standing up your AWS server. It's very approachable. It's very addressable. These go up, they stand up your server. So then we go over to our regular DDEV site. Oh, look, Randy Fay in a hat. And we see all of the great work that's being done here. And we go over to our mashup, and that's where we're going to look at the couple of changes that we had to make in order to enable continuous integration. And once the build is done, which should be any minute now, we'll go back and look at how DevPanel supplied those items to me during once the first server build has taken place. So once it's done making its build and its connections, I can then go in and grab those YAML files that I need to automate the deployments. So just in case we have any folks out there who have not been using continuous integration deployments, I will go ahead and say in modern development, there is an expectation that you should have at least a minimum, a staging, and a production branch of your Drupal application. And as you do that, the real proper way to be doing these things is simply that your developers should be making your code commits, making pull requests. Those pull requests should absolutely be reviewed by an additional developer. That additional developer should say, yes, let's merge those. Again, that's where something like Tower gets really interesting when you want to say what happened in those commits. You want to go see, oh, that's why it works now. Randy fixed it. That auditing, editing process is taking place. And then when the repo master, the repo manager authorizes that pull request, it goes into that branch that should automatically go build your new server. The minute they hit that button, they should not have to do any menial task of going and logging into that server, doing git pulls and managing the composer. All of these things should absolutely be automated in this day and age. And the load that takes off your developers, if you do not have this sort of system, is tremendous. It takes off all of those razor-edged little tasks that must each one be exactly done correctly. Those should not exist anymore. Those should be automated tasks, and continuous integration is where you achieve that goal. And so we're going to talk, so this next section, we're just going to look really quick at the changes that were necessary to enable continuous integration on GitHub. It was, but again, all of these files exist for the primary repository managers out there. So here we are, we've got DevPanel. We go down here and we'll see that I added DevPanel, started in DDEV in this repository. Then we see in this pull, I added DevPanel. You see here that I imported these files. I had to make a slight modification during the pull to an ignore file. DDEV has something extra that isn't in DevPanel, but no biggie. That showed up in the pull request when I merged these files in. And then we see this guy right here. So this file is the continuous integration for the most part. This is saying that when when my push comes in, we're going to go out and hit my test site, and we're going to send over my secret DP code, which we'll talk about in a minute. And that's going to tell the other server to come back to the repo and look for code changes. So this is it, or I think it's almost it. This is the tremendous bulk of what takes hours and hours and hours of stress a week and turns it into an automated feature that just happens when I hit the merge button like it should. Yay. So we're gonna get this file from DevPanel. It writes this file for us, and then we just have to add it to our code. So this is what we see here with my GitHub push DevPanel commit, is that this is me having copied the code from DevPanel, added my file and saved it and pushed it to the repo. Here's where we get into a little bit about Salim and his team. I had some trouble. Do I still have my trouble? Or is it? Oh, is it gone? No, it's over here. It's in main. Master. Okay, so I had some trouble. There was an issue with what I brought over, and I reached out and I said, hey, I'd like to have some help. And there were some issues. There was a change. Most of this just relates to a different environment, but right here was a change that was made to the main.yaml file at my request of saying I have a problem. They came in, they looked at what the problem was, they implemented a solution, and now that solution is automatically part of everybody's life. So I love it. It's like working with those companies that actually maintain open chat lines with their developers. You get the opportunity to, like, I don't own stock in DevPanel, but sell some stock. This is just, as a developer, I needed something to get through my day of making my stuff work. They had a look at my repo, which happens to be open, and made a pull request for me. It's Ben, met with Ben, and fixed the problem, so sent it towards my code, and that fixed my day. And this is the other change we made. So we wanted to add some hooks to the process, some different build behaviors as it related to the master branch being committed. So let's say that I wanted to commit. So we talked a minute ago about dev branches, stage branches, and main branches, or called master here, but we need to get out of that habit. And this is where you would be able to implement your different behaviors for each of those environments. Example, you want your dev environment to have certain tools turned on that aren't going to be available on production because they run too slow. This is, maybe you want to have performance analysis tools installed on your server at that time during the build that you would never let anywhere near production. This is where you're doing your customization and your hooks down here. And again, this is kind of just hanging out in your config file. Those config and main being the two files that we touched during this process. We added the hooks. We made this slight change that you won't have to make because it's now part of the whole system. And then we triggered a couple of really boring edits just to trigger builds automatically. This was me just testing to make sure the continuous integration works. Let's go back. Our build should be done. Any questions before I go into the build and view? And that, otherwise we'll have a QA after that. I know I've been just dumping information. All right. So here, yes, Matt.
Just raising my hand because it looked like the actual hooks that you added just said like echo hello world or whatever. Is that you haven't actually put any
I don't think we're doing anything
payload in
fun
there yet, but that's where you would put it.
Yeah, I don't think we did anything in that. I think it was just a matter of I need to know that I can do this thing, kind of a test.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Okay, so here we are. Our application has built while we were chatting, and there's a couple of things going on here. Actually, let me see. Did that hook have, going back to his question 1 second ago, did that have the code in it? Or is that just in config? That's just in config. Okay, sorry. So here's our application. And we have a bunch of interesting stuff. We have a server. Let's go look really quick. Hey, look, Drupal. It did a raw install. So this is technically, as trivial as that seems, this is big. This is days of work from scratch. Like if you're doing this, you've got a Drupal site installed on a stood up AWS server, and it's done. And we could have loaded our composer file in there, combined with our database, and then during those steps when we initially set up, and we would have a full site right here, right now. That's tremendous success. And the fact that it's like, oh, this is this demo going to show anything? That's amazing, because this is a week of work. This is somebody who hasn't stood up AWS before coming in to learn how to do this and get their site migrated in. That's a big deal. Celine asked that I mentioned that you can hit this button for Viz Code, and this is going to pop us open onto the server in a second. So we are now on the server, and this is not an application. This is entirely within the your GUI. The tokens were passed for the login in this process via that link. So we are now on your server. We can go in here and we can make sure, why am I getting that error? No, everything seems to be here in vendor. Maybe I need to go down and look in, like, let me check what's in the get ignore. Oh yeah, this looks fine, but I need to add something. Like, that's pretty sweet. It's a nice functionality. I don't ever want you to edit anything on your server this way. That's what Git repos are for. But if you're in the middle of a denial of service attack and you need to take your site down and you want to bop in here and edit your index.php file to close things down so your infrastructure has a chance to recover, you're doing it right here. If you need to know why something didn't happen, oh my God, I did my build and now my server's out, you can get in here, you can make those hot patch changes. And yeah.
A terminal?
Yes, there is a terminal, and I have to try to remember how to find it, but there is command line terminal. I don't think you get to it from here. Is it? Yeah, I don't know where that.
If you go back in VS Code in the burger menu.
Yeah, the burger.
There it is.
Yeah, and then there's a item for the terminal.
In the upper left, yes.
Yeah, that says terminal. You can say run terminal.
There it is, new terminal.
Yeah.
Terminal.
Or it's just looks
go
like
a little slower. There it is.
Yeah, and then here you can type in Drush or you can type in Composer, and then those tools are preloaded.
So that's more likely something that you might actually want to do something with Drush rather than edit your code in this environment.
Yes. Absolutely.
And I'll let you get back to it.
You can also establish whether your server is functioning properly and determine which server variables you have. Got a little line at the end of this where I mentioned that you can, because you need to know certain activities, certain piece of information in order to trigger the appropriate build behavior. There are some server-side variables that allow you to know if you're in main or staging or production or dev. And a great way to test that is to drop in here through the command line and whatnot. So that meant that the entire process of getting to your command line, the entire process of getting to your code, maybe you've had an incident where your repo's been blown out, maybe you're running a private corporate repo and that just failed, but you still need to let the world know that your infrastructure is there. You can get in, you can do unpleasant hot patchy things while you're here, you can run your git commands from here, all that stuff is available pretty amazingly easily. And for instance, we haven't had to install any private keys in here. I imagine that there might be a system for that, but we're using exclusively tokens and auth to access a pretty solid suite. I would say that this suite of editing tools would have been amazing 8 years ago by itself. We would have been having a demo just on that beauty. So inside here, we have our infrastructure information, what clusters we're on. We have our security. Nope. I want to get to the place. It's either our settings or branches. Let me say, I think I wrote it in my notes. Again, I haven't. Okay, we want our settings, our branch code, And this is our token. So if you go hack me really quickly, this is my deployment token. So you could try to deploy your Drupal site where my Drupal site is. I'll be destroying this at the end of the demo. This is our deploy endpoint. And this is the contents of our main.yaml file, which is used for the automation and of the continuous integration. So a minute ago, when we looked in that, when we looked in Tower and we looked at the main.yaml file, the contents of that integration are located right here. And this secrets DP token is the piece that we need in order to complete our continuous integration solution. So right now, the way we triggered our build is we went to DevPanel and we told it to go look at our repo. But the proper way to be doing this is if over in our repo, we publish to the master branch, it should go over until it should be the one informing DevPanel to make that call back to the repo. So in order for it to be able to do that, it needs a couple pieces of information, and that is right here, DP token, and that is this file. So in theory, we just copied this file, created main.yaml in, let's pop over, created main. That one's config. We went into our GitHub folder and under workflows and created a main.yaml file. And this is where GitHub is going to be looking for its instructions when you publish code. So it's not, the repositories aren't just cold storage anymore. They're looking to do what you tell them when you tell them, and you can build quite a lot into it. I imagine that we probably actually failed in the push on this due to coding standards because there's a whole bunch of additional rules that GitHub is being told to do when I publish. Anyway, we went in here, we edited our GitHub, we added our GitHub workflows main.yaml file. We used the content from this template right here. And now we need to set up our DP token in GitHub. So I'm going to pop over to GitHub. Okay, we're over in GitHub now. We're in my repository. Again, this is currently, I believe, an open repository. And we're looking for, I forget if it's, I don't think it's deploy keys. I think it was either code or secrets. It's secrets. Actions. We created this environmental secret, which is called DP token. Again, the name's right here. We hit the manage environment and we go down here and there's, do we want to edit? Do you want to add a secret? So secrets are basically, in this case, they're being used as the magic token to let us deploy to our server. But in general, you can have a number of settings here. You can give instructions and you can do that by branch. And that becomes kind of important, for instance, when you start deploying to entirely different servers by branch, like maybe all of your dev stuff is going into your firewalled area, but you, since the public is kept away from your firewalled area, you're actually sending to an entirely different server when you get up to your live production server publishing. That's where your different available tokens start to come into play. So if we hit the add, we're not going to add anything, but this was our DP token. And this was where we put this value in. Oh, and you click on it, it auto copies, which is very nice. So we hit save on that. We back here in Tower pushed our main our main.yaml into our workflows main. And from there on, every commit I make actually triggers a build. So this right here where I made a trivial build of edit 2, and I approved that and sent it to the master branch. That was enough to cause a full deployment onto the server. Our continuous integration is done. Our server is stood up. We imported a site, all of that within, I think 45 minutes of chatting. And that's pretty sweet. So which brings us to, this is why Matt gives all this presentations, because he's just slicker at all this. Okay, so which brings us to Q&A. So this is the worst screenshot ever, but this is just demonstrating that when I did go to that command line, I did echo dp git branch as a variable, and it let me know that I was on master, so we know that those values are making it through. We talked about VS Code and the terminal view. I just explained what you can't really read up here in this graphic. We talked about the exit strategy. Again, Salim, you just never know. He seems incredibly dedicated, thorough, and purposeful every day. But what if he wins the lottery and gets abducted by aliens? You are not trapped in by DDEV. DDEV is an incredibly handy tool that does a ton of work and makes it really easy for you, but it's publishing onto your AWS. You're paying your hosting bills to AWS. This is not about getting stuck with a hosting platform. This is about an incredibly handy tool with a very helpful position in a very hard to understand aspect of integration and stand up. We didn't talk about Solar and the other opportunities to expand this package, but they exist. And I totally think we need another presentation on that. And that is another fantastic example of something that is a pain. Knowing how to set up your separate Solar configured servers and getting those tied into your Drupal instance is a tier 3 Drupal developer task. It's tough stuff. And Salim has some recipes for this process, and I totally think we need another demo where we talk about it. I'd like to see a Lyft server come into play. This is automated container stand up made easy. All right, what do you got for questions, folks? Don't make me call names, because I will. Got this list. Oh no, I lost my list.
I'm the only one asking any questions. I was just gonna, maybe this is not a question, but just pointing out, when you were setting the value of the secret in your GitHub environment, it seemed like sometimes there was a $ in front of it and sometimes there wasn't. And I believe that the correct one is in the configuration there to not use the $ and to only use the $ when you're accessing the value of it from the shell. Is that correct?
During the setup of GitHub?
Yeah.
The nice thing, so I didn't know the answer to that. It seemed odd to me that the $ should be there if it's a variable, but it showed it in the description. I will, so you saw when I started to type it in that it popped the drop up for both of those in the autofill.
Yeah, that you tried
browser.
both of them.
Yeah, the nice thing is that it doesn't work if you do it wrong. So I don't remember if it's $ or no $, but I will assure you that it says that no.
I'm pretty sure when you declare a variable in the shell, you don't use the $ to declare it, but you do use the $ when you access the value, I think is the way.
Yeah, I did that once during this process.
You are correct, Matt.
Excellent.
I got more questions, but I want to give anybody else a chance. I'm going to back off for a second and see if anyone raises their hand.
Hi, my name's Jasmine, and we have been having some issues at my job with getting up an AWS server. And I just found out about DevPanel about 2 days ago. And the issue that one of our senior developers is running into is with AWS, she said that there's a universal break with installing Quick Start Drupal. I was wondering would that impact the DevPanel, like using it?
So by Quick Start Drupal, do you mean Drupal without Composer?
No, it's the Quick Start. I think it's the EC2 AWS when you can just go in and like quickly set up Drupal. I'm not really familiar with
Oh.
that.
Salim, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, I think if you Google for AWS Quick Start Drupal, there is a recipe that AWS gives you, which is pretty limited. So what we are doing here is more extensive than what the Quick Start Drupal does, Jasmine. But the Quick Start Drupal, you can deploy it through DevPanel. So there is the option of setting that up and deploying it through DevPanel, and we've done that in the past. Well, other customers have done that in the past, is deploy AWS reference architecture through DevPanel. But what we are doing here is using containers, and we're using clusters, and it gives you much more flexibility as to cloning and deployments and scalability than the original Quick Start.
So if I were coming into this as an outsider architect, I think that I would be suggesting is that it be considered as a migration project. If you wanted to use DevPanel, you would pull from your EC2 over to a cluster if that were the appropriate solution for you. They are different universes. I know the cluster has its little, the EC2 has its advantages. The cluster is significantly more robust. And what you really are getting into, if everyone agrees with me on this, is that with a EC2, you are managing your precious little thing. Again, you have your server, you're logging into that server to make adjustments, you're taking care of that object, where these, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the advantage of the clusters and the auto build is it takes that server admin load off your shoulders and it turns this into an appliance as opposed to a precious little thing.
Summary.
Most of the backend for the servers are managed by AWS, so it becomes like a managed service.
Yeah.
So that the EKS, the cluster management software, all that stuff is managed by AWS. So.
Okay. And I have another question about the Git repository at the beginning, how you chose, I think, GitLab or GitHub. I always get them confused. So we use AWS Code Commit. How would I use Code Commit in that instance?
What I would suggest, not knowing if there's a solution that exists to this already, is that you just bounce through another repository. Like I often have multiple repositories attached to, again, this is why I use Tower, is I often leash these things together and have multiple points of entry and exit. I'm working in this repo, sharing with this developer over here, working in this repo, sharing with this developer over there. Some of them are behind firewalls and we're using Git to transfer between them. If Salim doesn't have a AWS commit path currently, I would just bounce that through one of the other services, and it should be pretty painless. Like it should just be a pull push relationship once you have continuous integration done.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in here for a little bit. There are other ways of doing it as well, so I can talk about it offline if you like. So.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks.
All right. JD, Albert, Isaiah, Jeff, Chris, Lauren, I see you. Any questions? I heard a flutter of audio, then you muted again.
All for the best. Yes, yeah, it is. Yeah, for me, it's a comment. That's a really great thing. So what I'll do, I need to practice it. And then if I pick up something, maybe I'll post a question. But for me, I enjoyed everything.
Great. And that beta link is just there. Like, go hit it, set it up, run it. It's free. Oh no, you messed it up. Destroy it. Do it again. Like it's really painless.
Okay, thank you.
Let's put that. I don't know if I can put things in chats right now. Here, I'll try putting this in the chat. And that's this link. Oh, look, chat's been going on. Great. All right, I put the link to the beta site, devpanel.com, in the left side. Or in the chat, wherever it is on your source system. All right. Well, I think that's the end of my week. Any other questions?